This is the mop-up for November 9th, 2024. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you so much for finding me, and thank you for letting me do this. If I didn't have this show, I don't know how I would survive. So I read all your comments, and I have to because you inform and lift me up. Also, I have to screen out the a-holes and the Russian bots. I want to thank you all for the comments in the lead up to the election, and especially after the election when I got it wrong. I created a false hope around everyone I know and love. I convinced everybody that Kamala would win. I'm going to talk about this on today's show. So here is what I'm going to do this morning with great humility. I'm going to try to explain why and how I got the election wrong and what I've learned from my mistake. There is a general rule in this country that you should never acknowledge your errors. Instead, just move on. Don't dwell on it because it will only draw attention to your inadequacies and it makes you look weak. Well, my inadequacies are public domain. I already look weak. So I'll be honest with you. I don't know if this is going to be an interesting show, but it's a show I'm going to need to do to move forward. Okay, a couple of things. I just saw a video of a MAGA moron in a muscle shirt, staring down a black woman on the street, screaming in her face, and she just stared at him stoically, and he was threatening her. So I'm going to ask you to do something now, and that is make sure your cell phone is charged and your camera is ready to go. That's the first thing. And you should videotape, use your cell phone to document what you see. Secondly, this is going to sound patronizing, but I mean this. There are frightened, marginalized communities in America who have way more to be frightened of right now than others. You're pretty bright people, so when you're in the presence of somebody who you think is frightened, who is a marginalized community, make eye contact with them. Don't be patronizing. Let them know they have an ally, that if you're on a bus or you're on a subway, let them know, just smile, acknowledge them, let them know they have an ally. I don't believe it's patronizing or condescending. People need to know who their allies are and who's going to help them right now. Also, catastrophizing is not going to help. Expect the worst, hope for the best, walk in the light, go where the good is. Be around people who are good. Stay away from people who are bad. Stick with your allies. I'd like to say we're going to get through this. We will. Some of us won't. I don't like historians who say we got through the Civil War. A lot of people didn't. People say we got through COVID. A lot of people didn't. So are we going to be okay? Most of us will be. Acknowledge the people who are the most frightened and just be their ally. You'd be amazed how much a smile does. It's not enough, but you'd be amazed at how much it does. Little gestures are heroic. Like I said, I don't know if this is going to be an interesting show. It's the show I need to do, and I have to just clear the air on the quality of the show. I mispronounce a lot of words. That's because I read more than I watch television. I don't generally apologize for mispronouncing words or names of people because if I did, then that would pretty much be this entire show. I say ExxonMobil instead of ExxonMobil. Now, I did apologize for mispronouncing Kamala Harris's first name. It was something I wasn't paying attention to. I didn't learn how to pronounce Kamala Harris's first name. Thanks to my listeners, I learned why it's so important to pronounce it properly. Trump, especially, was mispronouncing Kamala on purpose as a sign of disrespect, and that's why I needed to get it right. So thank you for telling me. Last week, I kept calling it Reading instead of Reading, Pennsylvania. Should I apologize? Well, considering how the people of Reading, Pennsylvania voted, 56% went for Trump in Reading, Pennsylvania. They're in Berks County. 56% of Berks County went to Trump. I think Reading, Pennsylvania, I think those people are the ones who should do the apologizing. I'm going to try to do better at pronouncing words. I am, however, more concerned about getting my facts right. If you listen regularly, you know I do issue corrections. What I don't do is I don't have a segment called corrections. I sprinkle my corrections in as I'm talking. And I think that's a disservice to my audience. I'm going to try to have a corrections segment. I'll put the corrections under one umbrella. I'm going to try. I will even issue a correction for my mispronunciations. I'm going to try to do that. If you want to correct me, please begin your comment with the word correction in all caps, and then gently, please offer your correction. That way it will jump out at me if I see all caps correction. Please don't correct my opinions. You can offer your opinions, but correct me when I say something wrong, like I did last week when I said back in 2000, Republicans created polling units to contaminate the averages in order to create the illusion that Trump is more popular than he actually is. It wasn't back in 2000, it was back in 2020. I misspoke. So I need to correct these things. Sometimes I think I'm saying 2020 and out of my mouth comes the word 2000. Okay, some thoughts on facts versus opinion. If you Google what I tell you, it's all true. I rarely, if ever, get the important facts wrong. I get details wrong sometimes, and I misspeak. I will correct that. So, some of you are new listeners. I got a lot of new listeners in the lead up to the election. I lost a lot of listeners after the election. A lot of you don't know what I believe because you're new. And while I deal in facts and immutable truths, I do filter these facts and immutable truths through the prism of class reduction. Everything I tell you is true, but I have an agenda. What is my agenda? Whatever Bernie Sanders or Ralph Nader believe, essentially, and Howie Klein. I believe in what Jamie Raskin, Cori Bush, Rashida Tlaib, AOC, Ted Lieu, Katie Porter, Elizabeth Warren. Did I mention Cori Bush and Summer Lee? I believe what they believe. There are countless others I'm forgetting to name. but those are the people who come to mind right now. I think some listeners came to this show recently believing I'm a middle-of-the-road Democrat because I have spent the past 2 years calling Joe Biden the greatest president of my lifetime. I do believe that, but I am not a middle-of-the-road Democrat. I am, however, a Democrat because there's safety in numbers, and while a third party would be terrific, like Bernie Sanders, I too believe you have to work with Democrats, otherwise very little gets done. I hated Joe Biden until he got the nomination back in 2020. I also hated Kamala Harris until she became his vice president. I also hated Pete Buttigieg. I saw those three as corporatists who were beholden to wealthy donors. But there is a season for fighting amongst ourselves, and there's a season for getting on board. Once Joe Biden became the nominee, I took Bernie's lead and said we have to get Joe and Kamala elected, and then we have to work as hard as we can to move them to the left. I believe politicians are half-empty vessels. They come half-filled with donations and their own rabid desires. But the other half of them is what we stuff into those vessels. I think we did a halfway decent job stuffing ideas into Joe Biden. I do. Did he pass Build Back Better? No. Did he give us a public option? No. Did he raise the minimum wage? No. But he was still the most progressive president in my lifetime because the progressive wing of the Democratic Party pushed Joe Biden as far as he could go, given what he was up against, especially within his own party. He's up against Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Joe Manchin, Kristen Sinema. These people are not on my side of the aisle within the Democratic Party. Now, I would vote for them, but only when I'm left with no other choice. What do I really believe? Okay. When it comes to politics, I believe government has two roles. One role is to provide the absolute necessities that are non-negotiable. The other role of government is to make sure that the game of life is played fairly. So let me start with the game of life. Life is partly a game. And if you're lucky, most of your life is just a game. If you're lucky, most of your life is a game. Rashida Tlaib is the only Palestinian American serving in Congress. This is not a game for her. She didn't go to Washington because she thought it would be challenging, it would be interesting. That being said, even parts of Rashida Tlaib's life are a game. People compete, they work hard, they argue, they love, they try to win, they fight, they deal with loss. Some people are better at school than others, some are better with their hands. And basically, this game that I'm talking about is kind of meaningless. It's where people compete, try to do their best, enjoy the thrill that comes with winning, and when the day is over, they should be able to say, I won or I lost, but the playing field was level, and the referees made sure everyone played by the rules. I didn't get that promotion. I didn't make that sale, but at least I lost fair and square. And if I feel it wasn't fair and square, I have access to the proper authorities who will right that wrong. That's the game of life here in America. It is the role of government to make sure that the game is fair. But here in America, the game of life is not fair. Donald Trump proves that every single day. But I believe that government, good government not hijacked by the plutocrats, I believe good government must be there to make certain the game is played fairly, to make sure, for example, that the police and the prosecutors lock up the real criminals and not the low-hanging fruit. So that's one role of government. The other role of government is Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving is coming up. That's the other role of government. The Pilgrims landed on a cold, dark, unfamiliar land, and nobody knew what was out there. They were scared, terrified that there may not be enough food to get them through the winter. So they huddled together and took care of one another. I'm not going to talk about what they did to the Native Americans. I'm being idealistic here. I believe government is the most effective way to take care of the largest number of people in the most efficient and democratic way. I believe in big government. I don't believe in philanthropy or charity. I see them as tax dodges for the most part. I believe the answer to most of our ills for survival on the things that are really important is good, competent, big government. Government should be there to handle all the parts of life that are not a game. Public health is not a game. Healthcare is not a game. Education is not a game. Clean water, clean air, clean energy is not a game. Food is not a game. Nobody should be hungry. Nobody's entitled to a fancy full-course dinner at, the Outback Steakhouse, but everyone is entitled to a nutritious meal when and where they want it for free, no questions asked. Housing is not a game. Nobody's entitled to a 3-bedroom apartment overlooking Central Park, but everyone is entitled to a safe and clean place to live. The apartment overlooking Central Park is the game. And if you can get there, if you won the game and you get to live there, God bless. The clean and safe place to live, however, is not a game. Physical safety is not a game. The police and prosecutors must protect all of us, and the police must not be violent criminals. Financial security is not a game. Food stamps, Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, the child tax credit, welfare for dependent families, rent subsidies, they are not a game. Credit card companies, banks, payday lenders, and financial institutions are pretty much criminal enterprises laundering money for mobsters while lending it at biblically usurious interest rates. And it is the role of government, big, competent government, to prosecute the people in charge of the credit card companies, the banks, the payday lenders, and financial institutions. It is the role of government to prosecute these people who are in charge of those institutions, offer alternatives like postal banking to these institutions, and pass laws and enforce those laws to prevent these craven, malicious, malignant gluttons from extracting wealth from ordinary citizens. This is what I believe, and there is nothing you can ever say to convince me otherwise. And if you don't agree with what I just said, you're probably listening to the wrong podcast. And finally, I hate bullies. Physical, financial, intellectual, and moral bullies. Just because you have more muscles or a gun, that doesn't mean you're stronger. Just because you have more money doesn't mean you're better. Just because you went to college or graduated high school, that doesn't mean you're smarter. And just because you believe in God, it doesn't make you holier. Take all your self-perceived strengths, your intelligence, your money, your guns, and your moral superiority, and shove it where the sun doesn't shine. We are all equal, which is why I believe everyone over the age of 18 should be forced to vote, just like in Australia. And finally, I believe inherited wealth is shameful. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with working hard and giving your children money and helping them out. That's a natural instinct. But the children, fully abled children who don't really need the help, the children on the receiving end of that money, unless they're emotionally or physically in need, the children on the receiving end of that money must feel shame. That's also a natural instinct. It's a natural instinct for parents to want to give their kids money. It's also a natural instinct for the child receiving that money to have a sense of shame. If you're receiving money, an inheritance, nothing to be proud of. It's shameful. There's a big, massive, multi-trillion-dollar transfer of wealth going on, and it's nothing to be proud of. As baby boomers either inherit from their parents or baby boomers transfer wealth to their children, nothing to be proud of. If you're over the age of 18, if you're able-bodied, your brain is working okay, and your parents give you money, that's okay, but you should feel shame. You didn't earn that money, and that money gives you an unfair advantage in the game of life. I mention this because there's a pretty good chance the first thing Donald Trump and the Republicans are going to do if they win the House, the first thing they're going to do is pass another massive tax cut for the rich. Donald Trump's last tax cut back in 2017 added $8 trillion to our debt, and he and the Republicans, unless the Democrats win the House, they are going to loot our nation's treasury by making it so the rich and powerful pay even less taxes. And then they're going to claim there's no money for Medicare, Medicaid, food stamps, the child tax credit, rent subsidies, and low-income housing. And what are the rich and powerful going to do with all that money? Leave it to their imbecile children. So, like all of you, I'm steadying myself after Tuesday's massive disappointment. I've been reading, but not enough. I've been talking with people, but not enough. I'm trying to process a lot of information and data. And now I want to go over some of that information and data to show you why I said Kamala Harris would win. Let me give you some advice. You should probably stop watching right now, or at least skip, if you're not watching me live, skip about 10 to 15 minutes ahead. This is good, solid advice, because I'm about to go into the weeds. I'm about to explain why I was convinced Kamala Harris was going to win and why these results don't make any sense to me. I am trying to understand how it is possible that Donald Trump won based on the data. It doesn't add up. So I'm going to do the math, and I'm just going to show you why it doesn't add up. I get it. Donald Trump is a once-in-a-thousand-year event. And that is why some people, including me, got this election wrong. Donald Trump's popularity is very difficult to measure. Now, I believe one day he will go away, and we will return to something resembling what we had before, but some things change permanently. Everything changes. I do believe, though, after Trump is gone, we will have something resembling either a restoration or a succession of Caesars. I'm hoping for a restoration as opposed to a succession of Caesars, but a restoration still means we have a king. It depends how we do. We are being, once again, tested. I think we passed the test back in 2017 when he took office. I think we passed the test. I do. Again, you should probably skip ahead 10 minutes because this is now going to be really self-indulgent. Okay. I have been racking my brain trying to figure out why Kamala Harris didn't win. It really doesn't make sense. And I do feel, in order for me to keep doing this show, I owe my listeners accountability. Now, I try to deal with facts here. I try to deal with facts, and then I offer opinions based on those facts. And then I will try to forecast some outcomes based on facts, opinion, and I like to think you will trust me when it comes to facts and immutable truths. I like to think you believe my opinions are clouded in facts, truths, as well as hope, morality, more facts, more immutable truths, and, because I'm a human being, a healthy dollop of wishful thinking. When I go out on a limb and forecast an election, I like to think my audience knows I'm dealing with facts, immutable truths, good, reliable data, and, because I'm human, a vision clouded by wishful thinking. As I said on the last show, I refuse to see any pathway to the presidency for Donald Trump, and I still refuse to see it. And I'm going to go over the numbers. I don't see how he won. I owe you accountability. I said Harris would get to 270 by winning the blue wall, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. I got that wrong. I said before she even became the nominee, I said Joe Biden would flip North Carolina blue. I said that Harris would win the blue wall, that Pennsylvania would be tight, but I said there's no question she would flip North Carolina blue. I was completely wrong. I'm going to show you why I got it wrong. I said Harris didn't need to win Georgia, Nevada, or Arizona. I showed you the polling averages, the reliable polling averages of A-plus pollsters, and I said it wasn't looking great in Georgia, Nevada, and Arizona, but I said there will be surprises due to the marquee down-ballot races in Arizona and Nevada. I said there are down-ballot Senate races in Arizona and Nevada that will provide updraft for Kamala Harris. I'm going to show you what I got right. I warned there was no marquee down-ballot race in Georgia, so I was dubious that she would win Georgia, and I showed you all the polls saying she wasn't going to win Georgia. But I was positive she would win the blue wall, plus North Carolina. I was also pretty certain, even though Trump was winning the averages in Arizona and Nevada, I thought she would win Arizona and Nevada and North Carolina, because each one of those 6 states had a marquee Democrat running in a down-ballot race, and they were all out-polling their opponents by huge margins. And I said, there's your ground game. And I still say it. I said, when you have Ruben Gallego punching it out in Arizona, punching above Kamala Harris's polling numbers, she's going to end up going along for the ride in Arizona. I was wrong about the blue wall, North Carolina, Arizona, and Nevada. Georgia, you can probably find video of me saying she might win Georgia. I'm sure that occasionally slipped out of my mouth, but I never showed you any data to make the case that she was going to win Georgia. I did show you polling data to make the case for the blue wall, North Carolina, Arizona, and Nevada. And I got that wrong. In a second, I'm going to show you why I got it wrong. I'm going to tell you I'm not making excuses, but I would be lying to you if I... This is why I told most of you to skip ahead, because I am partly making excuses. So I took some big swings predicting this election. I struck out. Now, let me tell you what I got right, okay? And indulge me. I'm going to show you a map of the states that are blue is what I got right, okay? I predicted... Well, let me tell you what I got. I said the Democrats were going to win the House. I said there's no question they would win the House. I was wrong. They're probably not going to win back the House, but if they do, I got it. There definitely is a question as to whether or not they're going to win back the House. So I got that wrong. This Congress, this House of Representatives, is the most ineffective House of Representatives in American history. Based on that and data, I couldn't believe Republicans will keep control of the House, and maybe they won't. I said the Democrats were going to lose the Senate. I got that right. I kept warning that Harris was going to win the presidency, but there would be divided government because the Senate was looking bad. I kept saying she needed a tsunami, not a wave election. I warned you that Jon Tester wasn't looking good in Montana. I never said he would win. I said he was probably going to lose. I said there were glimmers of hope that Colin Allred might beat Ted Cruz in Texas, but I never said that would happen, and I never said Kamala Harris would win Texas. I said I had hope that with abortion on the ballot in Florida, that Republican Rick Scott would lose. I said I hoped that would be the case, but I never said Rick Scott would lose his Senate seat in Florida, and I never said Kamala Harris would win in Florida. What I did say was that as soon as Pennsylvania appeared to be a lock, Kamala Harris would take the fight to Florida. By mid-October, I was saying the fact that she's still putting it all on the line in Pennsylvania tells me Florida is not in play. And neither was Texas. That's what I said. I did say she appears to be cracking the map wide open in the final 48 hours. I said there were untold riches to be found. I just didn't know where they were. Some of that was based on that Iowa poll, some of that, but I did not know where she was going to win. This is what I got right. I said Trump was wasting his time campaigning in Minnesota, obviously, New Mexico, Virginia, and California. He was campaigning there. I said, what the hell is he doing there? It's undisciplined. He's not going to win. And he didn't. I said J.D. Vance campaigning in New Hampshire the Sunday before the election was a fool's errand. Well, Trump didn't win New Hampshire. I said the rally at Madison Square Garden would not deliver New York City. Obviously, I was correct. I predicted Democrat Sherrod Brown would be reelected to the Senate from Ohio. I got that wrong. But I never said Kamala would win Ohio. I said if this is a blue tsunami, then she will win Ohio. But I didn't see a blue tsunami. I occasionally said we might be looking at a blue tsunami. When I said that, I was wrong. So here's what I did get right, and I am being a little defensive. I did get every single down ballot swing state race correct, except for Pennsylvania, which is still too close to call. But it looks like I got Pennsylvania wrong. There were 7 swing states. 6 of those swing states had marquee down ballot races. Georgia did not. That's why I always said I wasn't sure about Georgia. I called 5 of the 6 down ballot races correctly. And it doesn't make sense to me that Democrats were able to win 5 out of the 6 down ballot races in key battleground states, and yet Kamala Harris ended up losing to Donald Trump. It is I'm going to go over the math with you. It is mind-boggling that Kamala Harris didn't win the states. 5 of the states where the down ballot Democrats won. Let me show you. Let me go big here. So this is what the map would look like had Kamala Harris won 5 of the 6 down ballot. She had won the states where the Democratic down ballot candidates also won, okay? Tammy Baldwin won Wisconsin. Kamala Harris didn't. Slotkin won Michigan. Kamala Harris didn't. Josh Stein in North Carolina beat the Republican for governor in double digits in North Carolina. Kamala Harris didn't. It looks like Ruben Gallego is going to beat the odious Kari Lake in Arizona. Kamala Harris did not win Arizona, and it looks like Jackie Rosen, Senator, Democrat, Jackie Rosen is going to win Nevada. Kamala Harris did not. This makes absolutely no sense to me. And had she won the same states that the down ballot Democrats had won, that would get her to 284 electoral votes. Trump would have gotten 254. You see this? She would have gotten 14 more than she needed. It makes no sense to me. Okay? It makes no sense to me. Okay? All right. See, I just doesn't make sense. Let me go over the numbers. Okay? Let me find the numbers. And again, this is why you should probably not be watching this. This is a mini meltdown. This is me freaking out, having a mini meltdown, and thinking out loud and trying to figure stuff out. Okay. Tammy Baldwin, Democrat, reelected in the swing state of Wisconsin, which Kamala Harris lost. Let me go big here now so you can get out your calculator. Okay, that's Tammy Baldwin. She's Democrat, going back to the Senate. Baldwin, and please check my math here, Baldwin defeated the Republican Eric Hovde by about 29,000 votes. Okay? But Trump beats Harris by about 30,000 votes. Tammy Baldwin outperforms Harris by about 5,000 votes. Trump outperforms his down-ballot candidate Hovde by 54,000 votes. In other words, 54,000 Republicans in Wisconsin walked in and only cast their ballot for Trump. I don't understand it. 54,000 couldn't be bothered to also vote for Hovde, the down-ballot Republican. Now, by the way, Harris underperformed Tammy Baldwin in Wisconsin by a little. All right, so let's go to Elissa Slotkin. She's the Democratic Congresswoman who won the Michigan Senate race for a seat currently held by Democrat Debbie Stabenow. This is a nice win. It stays blue. Let's go get out your calculator. This is what I see. Elissa Slotkin beat Mike Rogers by 20,000 votes. What is that? 0.3 of a percentage point? Close. Trump beats Harris in Michigan by 1.4%. So Rogers loses by 0.3 of a percentage point. Trump wins by 1.4%. Trump beats Harris in Michigan by 81,000 votes. He beats his own down-ballot candidate, Mike Rogers, by nearly 117,000 votes. What does that mean? It means 117,000 Michigan voters picked Trump, but not Mike Rogers. That's a lot. Where were Trump's coattails? And in Michigan, Harris, by the way, got more votes than Slotkin. Okay, I'm going to say Harris beat Slotkin by 8,000 votes. So Harris outperformed Slotkin, but Slotkin wins, Harris loses. Mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling to me. I don't understand this. Bob Casey is the Democratic senator from Pennsylvania. If you have a calculator, please check my math, because I'm kind of like Jim Lovell in Apollo 13. I think I'm doing the math properly, but you might want to double check me. Bob Casey is the Democratic senator from Pennsylvania. Now, votes are still coming in. There may be a recount. I suspect there's going to be a recount in Pennsylvania, and he may win this. But let's just say he lost. We're not positive he lost. And this will be the one race, the one down ballot race that in a swing state that I got wrong. One. This is the one I got wrong. But let's just say he loses. Okay? It looks like he lost. Maybe. All right. Right now, it looks like hedge fund manager Republican Dave McCormick beat Democrat Bob Casey by 37,000 votes in Pennsylvania. Trump seems to have beaten Harris by a much larger margin. He seems to have beaten Harris by 142,000 votes. The Democrat, Bob Casey, seems to have lost the Senate race by what? I'm saying 37,000 votes. Harris lost it by 142,000 votes. Dave McCormick, the Republican, got 141,000 fewer votes than Trump. What does that mean? Well, Trump did outperform Harris by 142,000 votes. And he outperforms his down ballot Republican Senate candidate by about the same number. What does that mean? What does that mean? Granted, McCormick won, but barely. Harris, by the way, got more votes than Bob Casey. I don't know what this means. I'm doing this show and thinking out loud, and I'm asking you in the comments section to tell me what you think this means. Telling me it's a stolen election isn't going to help. It's, that I don't want to go there. I know people are saying the election is stolen. I'm not trafficking in that stuff. What can we learn from this? Let's look at North Carolina. Now, we always knew the Republican Lieutenant Governor Mark Robinson, the self-described black Nazi, was going to lose to the Democratic candidate Josh Stein. That was before the stuff about the porn. We knew he was going to lose. And let me go big here. It wasn't even close, right? We knew this. Josh Stein, Democrat, beats Mark Robinson by 814,000 votes in North Carolina. Josh Stein beat Mark Robinson by 14.6 percentage points. This is the landslide in North Carolina we all saw coming. This is the landslide that, under ordinary circumstances, would have brought Kamala Harris over the finish line with Josh Stein in North Carolina. But Trump beats Harris in North Carolina by 189,000 votes. Trump outperforms the Republican candidate for governor, Mark Robinson, by nearly 651,000 votes. And Trump underperforms the Democratic candidate for governor, Josh Stein, by 163,000 votes. Josh Stein, the Democrat in North Carolina, the candidate for governor, got 163,000 more votes that Donald Trump got in North Carolina, and yet Trump beat Kamala Harris. How is this possible? How does Trump beat Kamala Harris in North Carolina, but underperforms the Democratic candidate for governor by 163,000 votes? I'm going to ask you to forgive me, but do you see why I called North Carolina for Kamala Harris? In what world does the Democratic candidate for governor beat Donald Trump by 163,000 votes in North Carolina, but Kamala Harris loses? I'm sorry, but if I had to make a call, I would still say with absolute certitude that Trump is going to lose North Carolina. In what world is such a thing possible? I'm sorry. Is anybody still here? Let's take a look at Congressman Ruben Gallego, who's probably going to be the next Democratic senator from Arizona, beating out the election denier Kari Lake. And you got to take your victories where you can. And this is delicious to watch Kari Lake get defeated. You might remember Donald Trump told Kari Lake, if I lose Arizona, it's your fault. He said he kicked her out of Mar-a-Lago. He said, get back to Arizona. What are you doing here? You're losing. Okay. Let's go look at the numbers. Gallego, as of this moment, is beating Kari Lake by 41,000 votes. I see that as a 1.5% margin. Correct my math if it's wrong. And that's not bad in Arizona, a 1.5% margin. They're still counting votes, but let's go with these numbers. Okay? Trump seems to be beating Harris in Arizona by about 162,000 votes. He outperforms Kari Lake by 131,000 votes. Kari Lake, who is synonymous with MAGA, Kari Lake seems to have gotten 31,000 votes more than Kamala Harris. So I don't understand what's going on in Arizona. Trump outperformed Ruben Gallego. Arizona is hard. I don't know what's going on there. But I do know that if Kamala Harris performed normally, if Ruben Gallego wins Arizona, that means Kamala Harris is going to win Arizona. Nevada Senator Jackie Rosen now looks like she's going to win a pretty tight race against the Republican Sam Brown in Nevada. So let's look at Nevada. Looks like Jackie Rosen, Democrat, is going to beat Sam Brown, the Republican, by about 18,000 votes. They're still counting, but right now it looks like Jackie Rosen is going to win by about 1.3%, which for Nevada is not bad. Again, this isn't the final tally, but that's not a bad margin for Nevada. Let us now go to the race between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. Again, preliminary numbers, Trump beats Harris by 47,000 votes. Trump outperforms his down-ballot Republican Senate candidate, Sam Brown, by 68,000 votes. And it looks like Kamala Harris outperformed Jackie Rosen by about 3,000 votes. But Rosen won and Harris lost. Harris gets about 671,000 votes and some change. Jackie Rosen gets, I think, 668,000 votes and some change. Again, Harris beats the Republican Senate candidate in Nevada. She beats the Democratic Senate candidate in Nevada, but she loses to Trump. Again, had Harris performed like her down-ballot candidates in North Carolina, Michigan, Wisconsin, Arizona, and Nevada, loses Pennsylvania, that gets her to 284. She could lose Georgia and Pennsylvania. She gets to 284. What happened? Now, she did lose the popular vote. What happened? Is anybody still here? Harris underperformed her down-ballot candidates in some races and overperformed in others. She underperformed Tammy Baldwin, who won in Wisconsin. She overperformed in Michigan. She beat Slotkin, but Slotkin won. In Nevada, it looks like Harris slightly overperformed the Democratic Senator Jackie Rosen, but Jackie Rosen won. She seems to have overperformed Bob Casey, who lost, we think, in Pennsylvania. In North Carolina, she significantly underperformed Josh Stein, the Democratic candidate for governor who won. She underperformed Ruben Gallego in Arizona. What is the one consistency here? Donald Trump outperformed Harris in every swing state, but he also outperformed every down ballot Republican. He outperformed every down ballot Democrat who won 5 out of those 6 swing states. I don't know. I do know that from what I'm looking at is his coattails, considering the margin of victory, his coattails are not that long. All right. That's it. I needed to get that off my chest. In the next few days, I will turn attention away from the race for the White House and the Senate and focus on the House. And that's a lot of work for me to do. It's a little too early to... I'm going to keep going. I know this isn't... but I'm going to keep going. This is going to be a longer show than usual. It is a little too early to raise difficult questions and ask, where do we go from here? I am a raw nerve, and I was surprised by how quickly the Democrats began to turn on one another. We're not even sure who controls the House yet, and already fingers are pointed. Now, I love Bernie Sanders, I do, but I think he could have waited a few days. I don't love Nancy Pelosi. She, too, could have waited for a few days. I was surprised by how quickly they cannibalized each other. We just spent, think about this, we just spent a year where they convinced us that Donald Trump is a fascist. This is the most important election in history. The future of our republic is at stake. And then, after we lose, instead of rallying the troops, helping us lick our wounds, instead of helping us summon the courage to fight on, some leading Democrats said, oh, by the way, all that stuff we scared you about, forget it. That's over. We're turning the page. Time to focus on the midterms and 2028, because it turns out our democracy wasn't really at stake and there are going to be other elections. I hope they're right. If our democracy wasn't really at stake, and I still think the jury's still out, but if our democracy wasn't really at stake, then maybe the Democrats should have run a campaign that encouraged Americans to vote their hopes as well as their fears. Now, I want to ask you, what do you think? Do you think the Democratic Party asked us to vote our hopes or our fears or both? What do you think? Now, I went along with the program. I asked you to vote your fears. That's what I did on this show. I said Trump was bad because he is. I said Trump bad, Trump very bad. It's more important that we defeat him in 2024. And Harris, just like Biden, will surprise us by how progressive she's going to turn out to be. That was my message. I said this is an all-hands-on-deck moment. It's more important that we win than do the progressive litmus test. That's what I believed. That's what I still believe. Let me know what you think. Did I cover the Democratic Party's platform? Not enough. In the last 2 months, for the past 2 months, I've been light on policy, more on the sizzle of defeating Trump. Did I fail to report the goals, the policy goals of the Democratic Party? Yeah, I did. Americans already knew Donald Trump is bad. Now, I think it's a little too early for me to say this, but I think you win elections by offering more than just Trump bad. I'm only pointing fingers at myself right now. I want to know what you think. Did the Democrats, I know on this show, I focused on how bad Trump was, but did the party only focus on how bad Trump was? So I love Bernie, but this wasn't the week for a postmortem. Not when so many Americans are shell-shocked and scared. I believe there are seasons. There's a season for politics, a season for governance, a season for Democrats to fight amongst themselves for control of the party, and a season for Democrats to unite against the opposition. There is also a season for mourning, and this is a period of mourning. Okay? The body is still warm. The election hasn't been even buried, and already Democrats are fighting over the will, the inheritance. Little unseemly. What are people saying? Well, people who are my moral compass, a lot of them are saying, I told you so. Bernie Sanders is saying the Democrats continue to make the same mistakes, ignoring the struggles of everyday working people, and that's why Trump is able to win the working class over with phony populism. Ralph Nader pointed out on his radio show that Kamala Harris had no problem campaigning with Liz Cheney, but seemed to be embarrassed by the Bernie Sanders wing of the Democratic Party. 2 months ago, I said, it looks like Kamala Harris is not kissing Bernie Sanders' ring the way Joe Biden did. And many of my listeners wrote to me saying, to hell with Bernie. He's old. He's no longer the kingmaker. I'm not going to get into that right now. What do you think? Gently tell me what you think. I don't, right now, we're all a raw nerve. I'm not interested in your anger. I love Bernie. I love Nader. Bernie pushed Joe Biden as far to the left as Biden could be pushed. Do you think the Democrats this cycle abandoned the Bernie wing? Do you think Harris is running more to the center than Joe Biden would have? Did Trump win because he poached enough of the working class to win because Democrats weren't speaking to the half of this country for whom this economy doesn't work? I don't know. I'm in shock right now. I'm working my way through this. What do you think? I have a feeling I kind of know what I'm beginning to think, but there's time to tell you what I think after we're done sitting Shiva. This entire year, I kept saying this election would be decided by suburban women. I said abortion was on the ballot, that this is the first real post-Me Too election, and that women will rise up. Let me ask you, what do you think? How important was reproductive freedom on Tuesday? Democrats put it on the ballot in 10 states. Abortion won in 7 out of those 10 states. This is really interesting. Abortion passed in Montana, red state, Arizona, Nevada, Missouri. Those are red. Missouri's a red state. Those are states, Montana, Arizona, Nevada, and Missouri, that Harris lost and Trump won, but abortion passed there. What does that mean? Well, Trump was very clear on abortion. He said the 6-week abortion ban in Florida was too rough. And he said it was a states' rights issue. He kind of implied that he wasn't going to vote, that he was going to vote for abortion in Florida, but then he backtracked. But he alienated the evangelicals. He was strategically wishy-washy on abortion. I don't like the man, but he might have been very smart the way he played abortion. Now, there are 16-year-old girls being forced to carry their father's baby. This is not a game. It's not a game. But these things are resolved through politics. Gaza is not a game, but it will be resolved through politics. Okay? So it's a little offensive for me to talk about the politics of abortion or the politics of Gaza. This is the world we live in, and Donald Trump, I think, might have been very canny when it came to abortion. You might remember I said back in January, right around Iowa, that Trump was taking a big risk on abortion. He opposed a national abortion ban, and he said, I believe in exceptions, like Ronald Reagan. He also said to the Right to Lifers, what more do you want from me? This is what, behind closed doors, he said to the Right to Lifers, what do you want from me? I gave you a Supreme Court that overturned Roe. He openly said, I cannot win a national election if you push me too far to the right on abortion. You might remember back then I said, if he wins Iowa, pushing away the evangelicals, because in the past you couldn't win without the evangelicals in Iowa. And they were behind DeSantis because Florida has a 6-week abortion ban. Iowa now has a 6-week abortion ban. I thought Ron DeSantis would win Iowa because Cruz won it, Rick Santorum won it. You got to be, to win the Iowa caucus, you have to be pro-life. I said, if he wins Iowa, turning his back on the evangelicals, and then gets the nomination, saying what he's saying, he may succeed in removing the pro-life albatross around the Republican Party's neck. Did he? I don't know. What do you think? Abortion rights passed in Ohio last year. They kind of were in Kansas. This year, abortion rights passed in 7 more states. So, again, I'm not asking you a moral question. I'm asking you a political question. Did we overestimate the importance of abortion in this election politically? Again, I'm not talking about the 15-year-old girl in Texas forced to carry her father's child. Did Trump outsmart the Democrats politically on abortion? Did he give Trump his supporters, did Trump give his supporters permission to keep 2 opposing thoughts in their heads? In states where abortion rights are secure, did Trump make it okay to be pro-choice and still vote for Trump? I think in some cases he did. I think there are way too many voters who only care about their abortion rights. Way too many Republican voters don't care about somebody else's abortion rights. So I can see someone voting for abortion rights in Missouri, which they did, and also voting for Donald Trump, which seems, I have to look at the data, that seems to have happened. They voted for abortion rights and Josh Hawley and Donald Trump. I think putting abortion on the ballot in Arizona or Missouri, I think, again, I'm not sure, but I'm beginning to think it helped Trump, or at least he played it right. He gave people permission to say, except for abortion, I like Trump. So I'll vote for a woman's right to choose in my Republican state here of Missouri, and that indemnifies me. It makes it okay for me to vote for the rest of Trump's agenda. I don't know. You can vote to protect a woman's right to choose in some states on Tuesday, and then vote for tax cuts, bigotry, homophobia, hatred for transgender people, hatred for migrants. It's the best of both worlds if you live in Missouri. I think these abortion measures, 7 passed, and don't forget Kansas and Ohio. And that is great news for women. But do you think, I want to know, if you think abortion on the ballot gave voters permission to vote for both abortion and for Trump? I think, as I'm saying this out loud, I'm beginning to think that. So, I don't know if anybody's still here. I woke up late on Election Day, and when I began reading the exit polls, the first thing I noticed was that the number one concern for voters was the economy. More than any other issue, it was, as James Carville famously said in 1992, it's the economy, stupid. And I'm going to be honest, my stomach turned into knots. When I saw that voters said the economy is more important than abortion or our democracy, I thought this is not going to end well. This is not going to be a happy day. That was my gut reaction. Now, I've spent the past 2 years singing the praises of Bidenomics, and I will continue to sing the praises of Bidenomics. But what I also have been saying is that there are yardsticks we use to measure our economy. We measure economic growth, inflation, and unemployment, and that tells us how the economy is doing. I said this is a game that presidents play. And I said these yardsticks only really measure the part of our economy that works for half this nation. If you listen to the show, I kept saying this economy doesn't work for half this country. And then I said, but for the half this economy is working for, Joe Biden is the most successful president ever. I mean, if you go by these yardsticks, he's outperformed Franklin Delano Roosevelt. But when I woke up and saw the economy was the number one concern, I kind of knew Trump was going to win. Now, I have spent the past year telling you inflation is coming down, because it is. But I look at what my health insurance costs, my rent, my groceries. I talk to people trying to send a kid to college. Yes, gas is $3 a gallon, but rent is unaffordable. Forget buying a home. It's impossible to find a place to rent that's affordable. This economy doesn't work for half this country, but when it comes to health care or a place to live, this economy doesn't work for way more than half our country. Now, I think Biden and Harris would address this more so than Trump is going to. And I believe that had Harris won and was able to control both chambers of Congress, she could have turned things around on housing and health care. Biden only had both chambers of Congress during his first 2 years. He did what he could, and, pretty remarkable. He also changed the conversation about inflation. It's not caused by fiscal spending. That was the big lie that's been told to us for 60 years. Inflation, and this is what Joe Biden kept saying, is caused by the concentration of wealth. And I thought he did a good job explaining that. And inflation is caused first by the supply chain issues, but mostly by the pricing power that comes from fewer companies and less competition. Housing costs are high because Republicans don't support funding low-income housing or public housing because that increases the supply of housing, which lowers the demand. And the lower the demand, the less landlords get to charge. I saw Biden talking about this, and I kept thinking, if he can get another 4 years with Lena Khan at the FTC, and this, he had a very aggressive antitrust division over at the Justice Department. He changed the way we talked about inflation. Jerome Powell, the head of the Federal Reserve, changed the conversation about inflation. Jerome Powell did not blame inflation on the fiscal stimulus. This was monumental. We were told, not by Jerome Powell, but we were told by Kamala Harris in the campaign and Joe Biden that inflation is not caused by fiscal spending, it's caused by untrammeled greed. It's caused by a government that doesn't enforce antitrust laws. Now, it's hard to get that message across when Republicans have a lie machine. And when they have when they've cultivated so many low information troglodytes who don't even know what a tariff is, including the guy at the top of your ticket. What do you think? What do you think? Gaza and Hamas. What happened on October 7th was a tragedy. What's happening in Gaza is a much bigger tragedy. But that is how Israel responds. Netanyahu said, when you kill one of ours, we kill 1,000 of yours. Now, on this program, I do report on the situation in the Middle East, but I do it at the end of the show. Some of you have criticized me for not reporting enough on the Middle East. Well, I do report on the Middle East. I report on Lebanon, Israel, Iran, and Gaza. I do it at the end for two reasons. It's very sad and graphic. It also requires explanation and some historical perspective. It takes time, so I save that for the end. When it comes to the Middle East, I made a decision to report facts rather than my opinion. I made a decision to emphasize more of what others are saying because I think I don't know enough, and it will work better for us if I say Iran said this, Israel did this, Hamas said this, Biden did this, Schumer said this, Bernie did this, the UN said that. It's way more important for me to tell you what others are doing and saying than for you to listen to my despair, sadness, grief, and anger when it comes to this issue. There are many reasons this election didn't turn out the way I wanted. I'm thinking that one of the major reasons is Gaza. I remember talking to my sister on October 7th of 2023. And after a while, I said, there goes Medicare for all in America. There goes a public option. I said the first thing that's going to happen in this country is Democrats are going to get pulled into this. And it's going to be the same albatross around the Democratic Party's neck that abortion is around the Republican Party's neck. Now, I like Joe Biden. I'm going to miss him. But he didn't stop the fighting. It's more than a year now. He didn't stop the slaughter. You don't need to understand the history of the Middle East to know that what is happening to the people of Gaza is, yes, Israel has the right to defend itself. Rockets from Lebanon, rockets from Iran, and Gaza are unacceptable. But America can guarantee the safety of Israel. Therefore, Biden should have stopped the killing. There is, I'm asking, you tell me. I am spending next couple of weeks practicing humility. There is a very convincing argument. Pretending that I'm practicing humility. No, I have to reevaluate how I see things. There is a convincing argument that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris deserve to lose because Gaza is their COVID. The same way Trump bungled COVID, COVID wasn't Trump's fault, but he bungled it. The same way he bungled COVID, Biden bungled October 7th. Trump didn't create COVID, but he crapped the bed. Biden didn't instigate October 7th. He didn't tell Bibi Netanyahu to go into Gaza. He cautioned against it. He could have handled the aftermath much better. I like Biden, but I believe in accountability. You got to call balls and strikes, as they say. There are things Biden got right. Not Gaza. Not Gaza. I don't understand how we spend $1 trillion a year on weapons and a military, and we can't protect the Palestinians and the Israelis. I don't understand that. In the end, I think Gaza, with some people, openly played a major role in the Democrats losing. I think for a lot of people, subconsciously, they couldn't articulate the horror they feel. and they just didn't vote for Harris because of Gaza. Some of them because of Gaza, like they know it's because of Gaza, but I think some people just couldn't put their finger on it. But deep down, it was Gaza. It's not good enough to say Trump would be so much worse for the Palestinians. It means nothing. Trump is going to be so much worse for everyone, including the Palestinians. But it is probably why the Democrats didn't win. You cannot tell a woman, please marry me because your boyfriend is so much worse than I am. That's not how you get a person to accept your wedding ring. I am processing the results. I am now hearing that one of the reasons Harris lost is because of sexism among Black and Latino men. I'm sorry, but the Democrats must do better than blaming this one on Black and Latino men. If you look at our prisons, there are a lot of Black and Latino men in our prisons. I shouldn't be laughing. We blame stuff on Black and Latino men. It doesn't, not smart to blame. I mean, Joy Reid on MSNBC, I was going to show you a clip of her like wishing bad on Latino men. It makes you look ridiculous, and it cheapens identity politics. I support identity politics. I celebrate a Democratic Party that is a coalition of frightened and marginalized communities. But frightened and marginalized communities are not monolithic voting blocks. There's more to a transgender person than just being transgender. There's more to Arabs or Palestinian Americans than Gaza, although I think, not right now, I think that's what they're voting on. There's more to the Black vote than getting police to stop shooting them in the back. But there he was, President Barack Obama, once again lecturing Black men out on the campaign trail. And when I kept my mouth shut because I didn't want, I wanted Harris to win, so I wasn't going to criticize Barack Obama. Last month, Obama was out on the campaign trail. He started lecturing Black men again. It's not a good look. It's tone deaf. It's bad politics for anybody to lecture Black men or any demographic group that's part of our coalition. President Obama, who I like, President Obama said, quote, "My understanding, based on reports I'm getting from campaigns and communities, is that we have not yet seen the same kinds of energy and turnout in all quarters of our neighborhoods and communities as we saw when I was running." He added, "The problem seems to be more pronounced with the brothers." The brothers. He went on to say, "Part of it makes me think, and I'm speaking to men directly," this isn't me, this is Obama talking, lecturing Black men. This is creepy that he did this. He said, "Part of it makes me think, and I'm speaking to men directly, part of it makes me think that, well, You just aren't feeling the idea of having a woman as president, and you're coming up with other alternatives and other reasons for that. Unquote. Well, President Obama, part of me thinks you need to come up with other reasons for black men to vote for a Democrat besides she's a black woman. Now, that is a reason to vote for Kamala Harris. But you got to do better than celebrating just the fact that she's a black woman. It is not wise to put a black woman at the top of the ticket and expect black people, black men or black women to say, okay, I guess that means we're all taken care of. We're fine. We're good. An argument could be made that the Democratic Party takes the black voter for granted, the way it takes the union vote for granted and the working class vote for granted. Now, there are strains of truth in what I'm saying. Strains of it. I'm not saying, pardon the play on words, it's not black and white. There are many reasons we didn't win the White House. Black people are not monolithic. So there are many reasons she didn't do as well as black men, but I'm going to get to that. We're not sure about this. What is true, what I'm sure, is that Obama on the campaign trail kept asking blacks and Latinos, why are you going to vote for Trump? He would say that in his speeches. He said, I just don't get it. Maybe not a good idea to ask that question in public. Instead of asking that question rhetorically, maybe Barack Obama should go find out. Why did Trump get black and Latino votes? Now, I'm not sure he did. The data's still raw here. But I do know that a lot of black men don't appreciate another lecture from Barack Obama. He did that when he was running for president. Pull up your pants, he said to black men. Cosby used to lecture black men, too. I'm not black. Maybe I shouldn't be discussing this. This may not be, maybe I don't have the right to talk this way, but I think it's condescending. I don't think black men need to be given lectures about personal responsibility. What they need are the police to stop arresting them. Stuff like that. They need this country to recognize the institutional racism in our country that makes it exhausting to be a black man or a black woman in America. It is exhausting. Now, I'm presumptuous saying this, but there's nothing funnier than a white man saying Trump is so exhausting. Try being a black man or a black woman behind the wheel of a car or walking down the street, especially right after Trump wins. There's video that I'm looking at. It's more than just exhausting. Again, life is hard. Politics and governing is hard. And I think Obama's good far outweighs what he occasionally gets wrong. If you're going to become president, you're going to end up if you're going to become a Democratic president, you're going to be a multitude of contradictions and hypocrisy, and you're going to hope when you're sitting behind the Resolute desk that the good that you do outweighs the bad. And I think Biden and Obama, I think their good far outweighs the bad. I think if you're Palestinian, I don't think you're going to say that about Biden. Obamacare isn't Medicare for all. It's not even the public option. A convincing argument can be made, however, that it's the best we can hope for given what this country has been turned into. I want free health care in America. Anyway, I'm not going to go there. I have to wrap it up. I'm sorry the show is going so long. Rashawn Ray and Keon L. Gilbert are two black professors who wrote over at the Brookings Institution last month that black male voters don't fit neatly into the electoral box that pundits, politicians, and wealthy ex-presidents want to stick them in. Those are my words, not theirs, but that's the message of this paper they wrote for Brookings. Professors Rashawn Ray and Keon Gilbert write that black men, believe it or not, have a whole spectrum of political views when it comes to abortion, taxes, Gaza, Ukraine, entitlements, and the environment. I know it's hard to believe, but black men are not all the same. So for Obama to lecture black men to remind them of how important black women are, I think that's, I'm not a black man, I think it's a little condescending. It's tone deaf, and I think it's bad politics. Professors Rashawn Ray and Keon L. Gilbert, let me know what you think, okay? I bring this up because this isn't gratuitous. They're blaming black men and black Latinos for the loss. They're the new Putin. I do believe Putin swung the election for Trump in 2016. But Democrats, this is a period of mourning. But Democrats need to own their failure. That's why I did this show today and just this is what I got wrong and kind of asked for forgiveness and made excuses. You got to own your failures. It's not the fault of black men and black Latinos men. Rashawn Ray and Keon Gilbert, these are two professors who wrote over at Brookings, they pointed that black men, by the way, they say, are second only to black women as the most loyal Democrats. Black men, right behind black women, are the most loyal Democrats. Bad politics to blame the loss on black men. More than any other demographic group of men, black men support abortion rights for women more than any other demographic group. That's according to these two professors who wrote the paper for Brookings. They write, the problem black men have is social mobility. They say that black women are more likely to get a college degree than black men and are more likely to have higher incomes. If some black men didn't vote for Kamala Harris, I'm sure, like with all groups, there was some sexism. But there might have been other reasons they didn't vote for Kamala Harris. For example, and I should be waiting on this, she was a prosecutor. Now, early on when she became the nominee, I went over her record as a prosecutor, and a lot of you got angry. Some of you said, now is not the time to bring that up. I agreed. It was more important that she won. I suspect we do not know how black men and Latino men voted. Here's what I do know. I remember more than 10 years ago when California voted against same-sex marriage, they blamed black men. There were all these highbrow pieces written about how we need to address the homophobia in the black male community. It became received wisdom that the reason California voted against same-sex marriage was because of black men and the black churches. But it turns out black men in California voted for same-sex marriage. The reason same-sex marriage failed in California was because of the Mormon Church funding all the attack ads on same-sex marriage. And black men in California had no problem with same-sex marriage. So we need to see more data before we conclude with absolute certitude that black men or Latino men abandoned Harris because of the sexism in the community. Again, it's a little presumptuous on my part. I'm not a black man. I don't know what they're thinking, but I do know they're all not thinking the same thing. That I can assure you. I do know black men are like Jewish men. You put two black men or two Jewish men into a room, you end up with 6 different opinions. If you're lucky, it's just 6. And that, my friends, is one of the pitfalls to identity politics. Now, I believe in identity politics. The pitfall is when a party, like the Democrats, when they begin to identify voting blocks based on race, religion, age, sexual identity, and gender, you run the risk of viewing each of those groups as all the same. I pore over voting data. I subscribe to YouGov and The Economist, and when I try to find out how people are going to vote in Pennsylvania, the demographic groups are age, religion, sexuality, gender, race, and education. And that's the predictive model to determine the outcome of an election. I don't want to take a page from Fox News. There is a whiff of identity, of bigotry in identity politics, a whiff of it, tiny percent. I believe that the Democrats are strong when they create a coalition of marginalized communities along with labor and poor people. That's what I believe. So I do believe identity is important. I started this show by saying there are black women being assaulted on the street and the subway right now by MAGA morons. I said it's not patronizing or condescending to let them know with a smile you're an ally. If you see someone with a headscarf, let them know you're an ally. I believe that people's identity is worthy of building upon politically, but they don't vote monolithically. I think it's criminal for a gay person to vote Republican. And, I will out gay Republicans on this show. And people say it's wrong. I say gay men vote Republican because they hate being gay. But some of them just are rich and don't want to pay taxes, and they don't care about the plight of other gay men. Some gay men like money more than they do marriage, or they're rich enough that they don't feel unsafe, and they don't care about the LGBTQ community that isn't safe. To them, I say, go F yourself. I'm a class reductionist. I believe a rising tide lifts all boats, that bigotry, sexism, anti-Semitism, hatred for Jews, hatred for Arabs, hatred for Muslims, racism, misogyny, all that nastiness is a constant in nature, and the best way to tamp it down is by fighting economic precarity, making sure all our public schools are well funded and nobody has to worry about health care, food, housing, or higher education. As a class reductionist, I believe when people are secure, a lot of the other problems, the bigotry, the racism, the hate, it doesn't necessarily go away, but it doesn't bubble so high to the surface. But I know those problems, racism, bigotry, hatred for marginalized communities, I know those problems just don't take care of themselves with easing financial precarity. We need to work just as hard to make sure people in positions of power don't abuse or discriminate, sexually violate marginalized communities. I see a two-pronged approach. Unite the 99% against the billionaires. We're all the same. We're not rich. At the same time, acknowledge the structural racism, misogyny, homophobia in our system. You must acknowledge the structural bigotry, racism, sexism in our country. You can't just celebrate our differences. You can't just promote equality without also offering concrete economic policy and protections that benefit the marginalized community. Bill Clinton said you have to vote your hopes, not your fears. That you win by convincing voters to vote their hopes, not their fears. So what kind of campaign did the Democrats run this time? What were we voting our hopes or our fears? I'm curious to know how you voted. Did you vote your hopes, your fears, or both? Now, I thought Kamala Harris ran a perfect campaign. She didn't make a single mistake. I think what little data I've been able to go over, I think she would have won had she not been running against Donald Trump. Trump is a liar, and so he had no problem making promises he can't keep. Let's hope he can't keep them. And because he's a liar and he was making promises he couldn't keep, he went big on the promises. He took big swings, massive tariffs, 100% tariffs on Mexico, tax cuts for nearly 100 million Americans. That's what he was promising. And of course, we're going to deport 14 million undocumented people. And he promised peace in Gaza and Ukraine. So he's not going to accomplish any of that. I hope he gets us peace in Gaza and Ukraine, and I hope he fails at everything else. He's not going to accomplish any of that. He's a liar. But he made it clear what he believes, even though that's not what he really believes. He only believes in himself, and I think that's what will save us all, is he just wants to stay out of prison and loot the Treasury. But how does Kamala Harris, how do the Democrats run against a liar who promises big, bold change, even though it's a lie? Would Kamala Harris have won had she taken big swings as big as Trump's? Would she have won if she promised the public option, Medicare for all, a ban on fracking, a Green New Deal, universal child care, which she was kind of promising, free tuition at all public universities? Would she have won making big promises? Did she make big promises? Did she make big promises? Did she make promises that were as big as Trump's? Could she have won taking bigger swings, making promises that were bigger than Trump's? For example, would it have been dishonest for her to say to the American people, if you elect me and you give me a Democratic House and a filibuster-proof Senate, I will give you the following, and then tick off a list of what I just mentioned? Is that a reasonable way to run for president? By saying, this is what I want. Now, I'm not going to lie to you and tell you I'm going to give it to you because we don't have a filibuster-proof Congress, but this is what I'm going to, filibuster-proof Senate, but this is what I'm going to fight for. This is what I'm going to try to get you. Would she have won by telling the American people, I promise you I'm going to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour, which she said, get me a filibuster-proof Senate. I don't know. I should wrap it up. Had the president gotten out sooner, there may have been other candidates in the race. The anticipation was that if the president were to step aside, that there would be an open primary. Those are the words of Nancy Pelosi right after Harris lost. Nancy Pelosi helped organize Biden's removal, and now she's saying we lost because Joe didn't get out sooner. Or maybe you didn't remove him sooner, but nothing's ever our fault, is it? In an interview with the New York Times yesterday, Pelosi said Biden should have dropped out earlier so there could have been open primaries. She complained that when he dropped out, he immediately endorsed Kamala Harris, so there was never any hope of an open convention. Really? Really? The president endorses Kamala Harris. Our hands are tied. We can't have an open convention now because the guy who we just said is senile endorsed Kamala Harris. So we can't have an open convention. It's never anybody's fault, is it? Pelosi said Democrats lost because Trump ran on the 3 Gs, guns, God, and gays. She blamed the loss on Trump, focusing on the cultural issues. Do you agree with that? Do you think Trump won the blue wall because of guns, God, and gays? Do you think that's what this election was all about? That was the mandate. Guns, God, and gays. Do you believe that? Do you believe Trump won because he demonized the LGBTQ community? He preyed on people's Christian nationalism and their love of guns. Is that what, especially when you look at exit polls that say it was the economy? Stupid. Bernie Sanders and Pelosi are going at it. Little early, if you ask me. Bernie said Democrats lost because he said you can't just focus on identity politics and cultural issues. You have to focus on the issues the working class cares about. Nancy Pelosi told the New York Times Bernie Sanders is wrong. She said Democrats have never abandoned the working class and that it was necessary to push back against Trump's attacks on reproductive freedom, women, and the transgender community. Well, I would say they're both right, but Bernie is 50 times more right than Pelosi. What do you think? Let me know. Harris had 2 months to mount a campaign. And had she won, right now she'd be a genius. It looks, and I don't know enough, I'm still reading and talking to people, but it feels like she ran a campaign a lot like Obama's, especially since she brought in so many of his advisors like David Plouffe. Some are saying her campaign lacked specifics. Do you believe that? Some are saying she had no big ideas, that she was more about playing defense, protecting the accomplishments of the last 4 years from Republicans who want to gut the Inflation Reduction Act while running up bigger deficits by giving tax credits to the rich. Honestly, I'm okay with playing defense. I think Biden accomplished a lot. There's a time for accomplishing things and then protecting what you've accomplished. I also believe the Inflation Reduction Act has yet to reveal itself. The CHIPS Act and the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act have yet to reveal themselves. We don't know how they're going to energize marginalized communities and the economy. Even Republicans like Mike Johnson are now calling for an expansion of the child tax credit. All she needed to do was win. That's what I felt. I thought she would continue to put numbers on the board the way Biden did, quietly. Unlike Trump, she was not willing to make phony promises. She ran on incrementalism, the hope of what is possible, and the invitation for us to make her do it without going into too much as to what she would be willing to let us make her do. That is what I feel. I'm not sure about that, but that was pretty much her campaign. She was offering decency, good and responsive government, plus a realistic understanding of how things actually work in order to move our country in the right direction, inch by inch. And whether you and I like it or not, even the New Deal was inch by inch. Harris's bet, the Democratic Party's bet, I think, and I'm not sure, was that the American people believed that it was more important for the Democrats to be in charge because the Republicans are so horrible. What do you think? Was she asking you to vote your fears more than your dreams and your hopes? Again, Bill Clinton says Democrats win getting people to vote their dreams. Again, I'm asking you, how did you vote? Did you vote your fears or your hopes, or both? I'll be honest with you. I voted my fears. I have hope. I had hoped that she would be just as good as Joe Biden, that there would be a public option, which isn't as good as Medicare for all, and that she would get us off fossil fuel without ExxonMobil noticing we're getting off fossil fuel. There are ways to do that. I was voting my fear. When she lost, I was terrified. It wasn't so much my dreams and hopes were shattered. I was frightened. I voted my fear. A little hope, but mostly fear. How did you vote? I think that's a good conversation to have. What did the Democrats convince you to vote? Your hopes, your fears, or both? Give me an honest answer. This is not incriminations. I'm not trying to. I thought she ran a perfect campaign, given that she had 2 months. And I think she would have won, but for Trump. I showed you why, but for Trump, she would have won. But I'm curious, did you vote your fear or your hope or both? Trump's bet was that Americans would vote their hatred and their dreams and their fears. He took really big swings because he's a liar. Promised massive tariffs, massive cuts in taxes to 100 million Americans, massive deportations. He promised the hope of more money, and he promised to satisfy the bloodlust to see people suffer. Let's hope he keeps none of those promises. Let's hope we make sure he can't. Control the House. There is still hope. There is still hope that the Democrats can gain control of the House. And if they do, it's an entirely different story. We can stop everything if the Democrats control the House. So all that's left is the counting. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Thank you to Mila and Bob in the chat room. This is not a normal show, but I needed to do it. I wanted accountability. I wanted to say, I got this wrong. This is why I got it wrong. And this is what I got right. I always say, I do get a lot of things right. I do. And so I'm being defensive right now. Okay, I'm going to just thank you for putting up with me this morning. Do something nice for yourself and somebody else. I'll be back Monday morning at 2:30. Thank you.